Hi everybody. I'm here to tell you about something that has been on my mind for a long time. I'm coming to you looking mildly strange, and I'm going to smile and probably scare a few people. I have no teeth, and I'm in the process of healing from having all of my teeth pulled. And I'm here to tell you about something called type 1 late onset, which is a very not brought up disease. Not very many people hear about it, and I've actually been told I'm crazy for saying that I have type 1 late onset. And even knowing that I have it, I don't know much about it. I have been a diabetic for 6 years. And it came on after having a cut on a foot that turned very infected and had my blood sugar go way crazy, and that was how it was discovered. More than likely I was diabetic well before that, but it was just that's what made it found. And over the course of about 5 years, I was super sick. I was always tired, I was always thirsty, I was always in the bathroom, and was only able to keep my diabetic numbers controlled for maybe 18 months out of that. And I had doctors that wouldn't test me for anything, and I don't really remember 100%, but they were always willing to give me more medication. They never bothered to put me on insulin. I do remember making a comment one time that I didn't like the idea of being on needles, but there was never any encouragement to try, and they were always telling me that I wasn't eating right and I must just not be doing the diet right. And as this went on and on, my sugars kept climbing and climbing. I would take my blood, and I was always going up from, it was 200, then it was 250, and I was always sick. I was on metformin, I was on Invokana, I was on Trulicity, and I was on glipizide. And I was always nauseous, even though I was hungry. I was very much of a, I wouldn't say picky eater because there's so many foods that I like, but I was there eating small meals, and so much food bothered my stomach. And I basically spent like 3.5 years deteriorating and having nobody really care other than my mom just saying, "What's going on? You're not normal." And when I moved from a place I lived about a year ago to where I live now, I spent the summer getting really sick, and I was always like, "Oh, it's the flu. Oh, it's a cold. Oh, I ate something. My medicine's making me sick." And the doctor that I had been seeing, I had some trouble communicating that I was trying to find a new doctor, but I needed to keep up with my prescriptions. And I kept telling them that I'm working with them, I'm trying to get my records. That didn't happen. And I had like this battle for a long time. And in 2018, I was working at a summer camp, and I felt okay through the summer camp. My sugars are still really high. I was always using the bathroom, and I was always thirsty. And I will admit, I was just getting frustrated with the whole thing, and I didn't pay all that much attention to what I was eating during the summer camp that I worked at. My cousin is actually the cook, and she is fantastic. That's another story I could tell you. But I kept getting sodas and wanting whole, 12 packs, and needing, 2 or 3 12 packs of soda to get me through the week. And I didn't drink sugary soda. I drank diet. But after I got out of camp, which was the middle of August, I had gotten hand, foot, and mouth disease, and it was like that I could never get over. I mean, I got rid of the sores, but I was exhausted all the time after that. And earlier in the year, I got an ear infection, and that again took months, to heal. And at this point, I could like have slept all day. I didn't even have like the energy or the want to just go up the stairs in my house. We had an old Victorian house at the time, so it had like one of those, 13 step stairwells. And I kind of literally would park myself every day in the recliner, or on the couch, and I didn't want to get up. And I mean, I even remember telling my two girls that are, at the time were 9 and 6, that I didn't even want to go upstairs. I was too tired. Or I was always having them run and get me stuff. Over the course of this progression of the disease, too, I had weighed 289 pounds when I started, and I had wanted to lose because of the diabetes. So I had had the goal of getting back to the weight I had weighed before I got married in 2008. I had gained most of this weight probably just out of, being lazy, it seemed. And I had two kids that I never bothered to work off the weight. And so I had gone from 195 to 289. And in the beginning of having the disease, I had worked off about 40 pounds and was starting to feel a lot better, which is about where I've come back to after getting a lot of my health issues sort of sorted out. But I went through the disease progression to where I figured out what I had, of having gone from 289, as I said, to 165, 64, right at the very end of the mess. And that's like 130 pounds. I can't do math at the moment. But anyways, I had lost, 100 and some pounds, and the last week was really tired. I literally spent a week trying to eat food, and it never would sit. I was always sick, and I thought I had the flu. And I drank Sprite. I think that was all I had for about a week, was some Sprite, and that one was not diet. I got my kids a kitten on September 25th, and we had to drive about 2 hours out to get it, and not even realizing it, I pretty much slept the entire way. And I had positioned my face in front of the window of our car because I was tired, but I was leaning against the side post of the car, and the wind was coming in, and I was actually having trouble breathing, and the wind was blowing into my face, and I thought it was congestion, and I felt quite a bit better, but it was like I couldn't comfortably breathe. We got to my friend's house. She showed us their horses and their farm. My girls were running around with their kids, and I just felt just tired, and I thought, I've got to be sick. And pretty much the whole way home I slept. Same thing with the window. I remember we stopped about 2/3 of the way back and used the bathroom, and I was awake for a little while, and I felt a little better. Got back home, the girls played with their kitten, and I slept on the couch. So at this point, I had basically slept all that day, and dismissing my symptoms as another sickness, another cold or flu or something. And I remember waking up about 9:30 at night on the couch and telling my husband that something didn't feel right. And I said, I don't know why, but I'm starting to get scared about the way I feel. And he brought me to our local emergency room, and they told me that my sugars were through the roof. I was almost hyperventilating at that point. They were having a hard time getting me to calm down, and that basically was when they knew that something was wrong, and they finally took me seriously. I hadn't been able to get into a doctor in my new home. We'd been there since May, and between not having an address and having a hard time finding a place to live when we'd moved, living with friends, getting medical records, it had taken, and then working, it had taken from May 13th to September 25th. I had a doctor appointment actually scheduled, but I hadn't made it to it. I think it was supposed to be within those first couple of days of October. And in the hospital, I have snippets of that first like 36 hours, but due to the condition I was in, I was so out of it that I really don't remember anything. My A1C was 18. You're supposed to, I think, be around a 7. I don't remember how high my blood sugar was, as I do know that it wasn't rateable on my meter. My diabetic medicine obviously wasn't working because it was for a type 2. And after getting me stabilized, I was in the intensive care unit in the local hospital. They actually had to take me from my local emergency room to a hospital that was about half an hour away because they didn't have an intensive care unit to take care of someone in my condition. And I got to the ER at the other hospital. They brought me up to intensive care. I was there from like the middle of the night to the next evening. So, like, what would that be, 18 hours in the intensive care unit? And then I was in the hospital for 4 days. While I was in there, they were giving me insulin. My sugars were coming down. I was low potassium. I had an abscess. I was infected. I was starving. And they started helping me figure out, meals and insulin. And I wasn't tired anymore. And even just getting the sugar down in a matter of, a day, I felt different. It was crazy. I spoke to a diabetic educator, and they offered me what they call a C-peptide test. This tests for what your pancreas